Good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is FPC Radio Live. It is January the 23rd, 2023, and we are down to just 4 teams, folks. That's right. 4 teams remain as Divisional Round Weekend is in the books and Conference Championship Weekend is set as the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals will meet for the second season in a row. And then you have the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the San Francisco 49ers. And John, interesting weekend to say the least. Divisional round weekend. I mean, we got some good games, but I think there's a lot of disappointment to be had for a number of different reasons. And we'll start where we started this weekend in Kansas City and Jacksonville, and I think the disappointment being you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Patrick Mahomes goes down with an injury, and you allow Chad Henne to drive right down the field, 98 yards. You pretty much lost the game right there. You failed to take advantage of a golden opportunity to really kind of swing the game in your favor. And it's got to really sting for a young Jacksonville team who, they're still learning how to win. This isn't a team that, maybe you're going to look back at this and maybe not say it's a terrible thing. But it certainly is going to be a missed opportunity, and that was kind of the start of a really weird weekend.
It was a weird weekend, Ian. It was also kind of flat too, right? It was. We didn't have the dramatic finishes like we had in Super Wild Card Weekend, and Jacksonville, they looked pretty solid in that game against the Chiefs on Saturday, but 2 turnovers, the fumble down inside the 5 was a killer because that really put them behind the 8 ball, and also, like you said, the turning point in that game was Chad Henne takes over at his own 2 and goes 98 yards down the field. And that really was a huge, huge series. If you have him in there and force a punt, maybe you're looking at a totally different ballgame. I thought Trevor Lawrence looked pretty good for a young guy in his first divisional round game. Probably not his last of his career because that team's very young and talented. But just kind of like nothing exciting in that game, but Kansas City, give them credit. They did what they always do, which is advance to the AFC Championship game now for the 5th year in a row.
Well, will anyone ever cover Travis Kelce?
No. I would triple team the guy. Either he's the best route runner in the history of route running, or we do think Andy Reid is a great play designer. But how does he get open so often? And the thing is, the guy never drops the ball, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just such good hands. He's sensational. He makes that offense go because he was effective with Henne in the game.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we're not going to get into the quarterback discussion. It's not what we're here to do today. We're here to kind of more or less react to Divisional Round Weekend. But I mean, the team didn't miss a beat with Chad Henne under center. I mean, in terms of moving the ball, this offense, it has this incredible ability to scheme everyone open. And I know people use it as a detriment and like, oh, everyone's wide open. Well, look, I mean, the reality of it is it's true. I mean, look at all the metrics that you can use to measure how open receivers are, and the Chiefs are going to be at the very top of it. And we saw that on display this week. So, look, they got the job done. They should have beaten the Jaguars, and with a little bit of adversity, they were able to overcome it and kind of move forward. Obviously, the health of Patrick Mahomes is going to be the question. He had he did get confirmed with a high ankle sprain, but according to reports after the game, he wasn't even in a walking boot. So, quite frankly, I don't think this is going to be an issue. I know it's going to be talked about all week, but the fact that he got back out there and he didn't even have any sort of wrap or bandage around it as he left, and he was in pretty much street clothes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure his ankle's going to be fine, John.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He got hurt in the postseason a couple of years ago, right? Didn't he get hurt against Cleveland in the divisional round? And Henne came in and the Chiefs were able to win, and then he was fine the next week against Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. I mean, he's a young guy. He should be able to recover. It may hinder him a little bit, but, they still got all their weapons intact. And it's going to be an interesting game when they take on the Cincinnati Bengals for the second straight year in the AFC Championship game, again, at Arrowhead.
Yeah, and look, I mean, at least, I guess, in this situation, with Buffalo losing, it kind of it kind of puts to bed the whole neutral site situation where you're like, okay, we don't have to deal with that, and we're going to get to Buffalo in a minute. Trust me, I talk about weird and disappointing. Well, we should have probably started with Buffalo in that one, but yeah, I'm in that sense, I'm glad, because I really, I really didn't want to see a neutral site game because I feel like it would have been the catalyst to eventually getting championship weekend to neutral sites, and I just don't want that. So, the second game on Saturday, John, and we'll really dive into the four teams that moved on later as we get closer to the weekend, probably on Friday when we do our preview. But the second game was just, again, a snore fest. I felt like such a fool, John, for picking the Giants. I woke up. I said it last week. I was like, I have this feeling in my gut. Now, to be honest, I'm kind of really concerned. I might want to go see my doctor now. But because at first I thought it was something telling me to pick the Giants, and clearly that was wrong. Because look, I'm not going to bury this team moving forward. This is a team that we've talked about all year that I think were a little bit ahead of where they probably should have been in terms of their growth, which isn't a bad thing. Certainly not, considering what the Giants have been since they last won a Super Bowl. But they definitely looked like that one of those teams on Saturday because they just looked like they were overmatched against Philadelphia, who really kind of eliminated a lot of the doubts or concerns rather that I had about the Eagles going into the playoffs because of how the last month of the season finished. But yeah, the Giants. I'm not going to say horribly disappointing, just because, again, like I said, yeah, I didn't expect them to get this far and be in this position yet, but you can't help but be a little bit disappointed in the actual play on Saturday.
No, they were overmatched. Look, the Giants ended the regular season 2-7-1 over their final 10 games, so they weren't exactly rolling into the playoffs. This is also an indictment on the Minnesota Vikings, who actually lost to the Giants in the Super Wild Card weekend.
And they looked overmatched.
Bad are the Vikings? And they looked overmatched. So fortunately, the Vikings didn't win there because Lord knows what the score would have been in their next matchup. They would have played San Francisco in the divisional round rather than, San Francisco taking on Dallas Cowboys. But yeah, I mean, the Giants had a nice season, overachieved. But what you see in the Philadelphia Eagles, especially when Jalen Hurts is in there, because they only lost one game this year with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, is how much they control the line of scrimmage on offense and defense. And still, as much as we talk about, obviously, the franchise quarterbacks and a lot of the playmakers, when you control the line of scrimmage on both sides, you're going to win a lot of football games. And that's how the Philadelphia Eagles are built. And they showed that on Saturday night over the Giants in a blowout.
Yeah, and look, if you're an Eagles fan, that's got to be a great feeling. I know, again, the Giants, no one's chalking them up as a tough opponent. I mean, certainly in hindsight, based on what we saw, but still, this is the first really big performance. I know, Jalen Hurts played in the last week of the season, but this was the first real big win in, a month and a half for this team. And they did it with obviously their number one starter under center. And that's something that, again, maybe it's more just a misguided thought that they needed to do something like that to kind of regain some of that confidence that they had. But again, they looked good. They looked like the best team from start to finish the season. They took care of business again. Like I said, I'm never going to chalk up a third meeting with a divisional opponent as easy. But they made it look easy. And really right from the get-go, it was, you said it, they were overmatched and they just looked like they didn't belong on the same field. The Giants, that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, without question. I think Philadelphia really benefited from the bye week. They seem to be banged up. It got them an opportunity to get Jalen Hurts somewhat healthy. I don't know what percentage he is right now. He looked darn good on Saturday night against the Giants. But, when you get that extra week to prepare, but also to just heal up a little bit, they look ready right from the get-go. I mean, 28-0 at the half, and they're not the LA Chargers. They took care of business in the second half and won comfortably.
Yeah, and look, I mean, when you're looking at the landscape of the conference championship weekend, the Eagles are the newcomers. Because, well, again, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they won a Super Bowl, but in terms of NFL time. 5 years is a long time, and certainly the Eagles have had quite a bit of turnover since then. But with the 49ers, you're talking about a team is now in its third NFC championship game in the last 4 years. Obviously, the Chiefs on their fifth straight AFC championship game, the Bengals on their second, and now you have the Eagles, perhaps better than all of them. And I mean, we're talking about some 4 really good teams, and probably the 4 teams that I think were talked about the most, certainly down the last stretch of the season, would save maybe Buffalo. Although, like I said, we're going to get to them in just a second. These are the 4 best teams in the league, and they have been really the entire season from start to finish. And it's going to be hopefully a joy to watch. So, anyways, let's kind of shift into Sunday, because this was really the most anticipated day of the weekend. I would say very comfortably, because you had Buffalo Cincinnati, and then you had Dallas 49ers. Now, Buffalo Cincinnati was, for many reasons, the big marquee matchup of the weekend. Obviously, it was supposed to be a rematch from earlier in the season, but we all know what happened and why the game wasn't played. You get a snow game, which was kind of nice, John. I saw all the snow coming down. I'm like, all right, I can deal with it. All right, let's get her started. Well, one team heard that, another didn't, and I mean, look, this was a dominating win by the Bengals. They just took care of business, John, and I'm not shocked that the Bengals won. I mean, I did pick the Bills, but when we talked about it last week, I mean, this was a tough decision to make, and I didn't. I mean, maybe my conviction wasn't as strong as I thought it was in picking the Bills, and clearly my pick was in doubt very early on. The Bengals, they're a better team. I mean, just start top to bottom. Maybe I'm saying just in general, people, myself even, looked at this Bills team, and we bought into the hype, and look, there was a lot of good ways to sell that hype, and we saw it somewhat on a week to week basis. There were a lot of circumstances, but bottom line is, they came into one of the biggest games of the biggest game of the year, and they looked absolutely flat. And on the flip side, you have the Bengals, who, I mean, confidence. They exude confidence on both sides of the ball, and a lot of that has to do with the guy under center.
Oh, without question. I mean, a lot of teams take the personality of their quarterback and coach. And obviously, Joe Burrow, to me, is the coolest customer in football right now. I mean, I started the hashtag last year. I wish it would catch on a little bit more, Baby Brady. I mean, he plays the quarterback position the most like Tom Brady of all the young quarterbacks. Those first 2 series, that looked like Tom Brady in his prime with the Patriots, with Josh McDaniels calling plays and him just going right down the field, taking what the defense gives to him, and then making the big throws when necessary. He was surgical in those first 2 drives, and it was pretty much over at that point. It was 14-0 before Buffalo knew would hit them. They did cut it down to 7 on a couple of occasions, but they never felt like they were in the game. I said to you before, we started today, that the Bengals looked like the Patriots in that game, right? I mean, like, the offense was just precise. They ran the ball, balanced. Offensive line, but all those injuries, still very, very good. The wide receivers on point, the quarterback phenomenal. And on defense, and Tony Romo, who says a lot of stupid things, did make one really good point when he talked about Cincinnati's defense being the best tackling defense in football. You wouldn't think that that's a big deal, but in today's NFL, it is, because you want to limit those yards after catch of your opponent. And I think the Cincinnati defense, we've talked about it all year, is one of the most underrated, if not the most underrated unit in football. Because when we think of Cincinnati, we think of Burrow and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon and a lot of firepower, which is true. But their defense is really good. And it was good in the postseason last year, and it's right on point again this year.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of that has to do with they got off to a really bad start. I mean, and you kind of almost put the Bengals on the back burner early, and it became about, I mean, it was always about the Bills heading into the season, regardless of what the Bengals did last year. But there was also, look, the Bengals, they make a run to the Super Bowl. It's like, look, it's impressive. No one's going to doubt what they did, but you're still thinking like, okay, can they do it again? Because it's not easy. It's not easy. But to your point, the same pattern is starting, kind of adds to your discussion about, the similarities between the Patriots, because we saw this from the Patriots. I mean, they would have slow Septembers, or they'd have kind of stretches, but you were just kind of like, whatever. Wake me up in December, because by then they're going to have a 4-game lead in the division. They're going to be, picking up steam. And then to your point, you come out and it's like, okay, you get the ball and it's like, I don't even have to guess what's going to happen. It's going to be opening drive, score, set the tone, and boom, that's it. You're off rolling. And that's exactly what Cincinnati did. And that's exactly what Joe Burrow did. So, and look, I mean, I didn't expect, I just did, I obviously I didn't expect Buffalo to lose. But at the very least, even if I, were to pick the Bengals, I would have never expected them to come out so flat and just lethargic and really just kind of play sloppy football. And you can't really blame it on the weather. Like, snow games are supposed to favor the offense, John, because, the offense knows where you're supposed to go. The defense are that are going to have to read and react and deal with the elements in that situation. And I think that's the most difficult part. But Buffalo just looked out of sorts. There was that issue or that argument on the sideline that, look, it didn't look good on camera. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what Stephon Diggs was saying. Maybe he was being very encouraging, but let's just say the body language didn't seem that way. And it seemed like a very frustrating conversation on the sidelines. And that's something that, like, look, last year for Buffalo, that loss was heartbreaking. That's a loss that you just sit there, you're stunned. It's not necessarily, it's not gonna crush you in this, in the sense that it's gonna break your resolve, but it's just gonna absolutely sting like nothing stung before, because it's like 13 seconds you gave that up. This year, John, Buffalo looked like they didn't belong. And that's saying something for the team that was the pick heading into the season. And I know a lot of Bills Mafia are, heads buried in the pillow right now. I'm not saying they're crying. I'm just saying, any team that's, right in the thick of a Super Bowl hunt, and you watch them get eliminated far sooner than you ever expected, that sucks. And it stings. So I understand what Bills Mafia is going through right now, because this season was the season. It seemed like everything was kind of, coming together sort of at the right time. And then here we go, back to the drawing board. And like I said, this is a lot different from last year going, last year going back to the drawing board. This year seems like it's going to have a lot more negative effect heading forward.
Yeah, what do they do in the offseason? Look, I'll throw this out there. Maybe I'll be the first person that does this. Sean McDermott's not going to lose his job because he showed exemplary leadership ability during the DeMar Hamlin crisis, right? I mean, he's outstanding in that. But now you're looking at a team that is considered the most talented in the league, or among the most talented in the league, right? And they've made the playoffs, 5 out of the last 6 years, and they've been to one conference championship game. And in that game, they got blown up by Kansas City a couple of years ago. Yeah. So I don't think his job's in jeopardy. And, they have a pretty good ownership group there. It's not like they're going to fly off the handle and do something. But I think you're going to have to keep an eye on him for next year. If they end up losing again in the divisional round, it may be time to change things, because the quarterback's not going anywhere. You don't find quarterbacks like that very often. And I think the problem with Buffalo is, can you ask Josh Allen to do more? I mean, the guy is your running attack. He's your quarterback. I mean, why not just line him up on defense and see if he can
already asking him
put pressure on the quarterback? Well, that's my point. Like, what more do you want the poor kid to do? I mean, how long is he going to last, too? I mean, he took a lot of hits on Sunday. I know he's a big, strong kid, but he's everything on that team.
Yeah, we've said it a lot. I mean, he's not going to last playing the way he does. No. Certainly not any sort of long-term career. But, at the same time, though, it used to be Dak, I'm looking at the screen right now and they're replaying some highlights from the 49ers Cowboys game. Josh Allen, it was almost necessary that he did all the things that he's doing. But based on how he's been playing, John, you're better off him not doing that much, because it's all well and good when they're scoring points and he wasn't turning the ball over, but he's turning the ball over a lot and putting the ball in risk a lot. Like I know there's a couple situations that didn't result in actual turnovers, But again, you can't ignore that when you're looking at the big picture and saying, well, why is this Buffalo team struggling? Well, is it necessary for Josh Allen to do all these things? Perhaps, but again, how much can he actually handle? And I think he's already surpassed his limit to the point where you're seeing a lot more mistakes. And again, you come out today and you just look absolutely flat.
Yep. So, no, yeah. When you have someone to do more and more and more, the chances are they're going to make some mistakes, right? I said the last half of the season that the Bills play football the way John Daly plays golf.
Yeah.
And, it's exciting, 400-yard drives, but then there's some three putts in there. And at the end of the day, maybe you don't make the cut in a major, or if you do, you barely make it, and then you shoot an 82 on Saturday. So that's kind of what I see with the Buffalo Bills. And, they've got to try to establish some sort of running game besides Josh Allen. I mean, it looks a lot like Cam Newton in Carolina, right? Where it's all on one guy, and how long can he last? I mean, he's a physical marvel, but the hits he's taking, I mean, he, gets pounded out there. That doesn't bode well for a long career, that's sure.
Well, I saw on Twitter someone say Buffalo is basically the Tennessee Titans. And there's a lot to it.
One conference championship visit under this regime.
Yeah,
you're right.
One and done, a number one seed, or well, maybe not a number one seed. But to your point about Josh Allen, they just the weight of the team is just reversed. So with Tennessee, it's Derrick Henry, and with Buffalo, it's Josh Allen. And to your to the comparison, it's like, well, both these teams, a lot of hype, a lot of success, but really nothing to show for it. And well, look at where Tennessee is now, and if you're Buffalo, you hope that's not the path you're going to follow. So, anyways, heading to the last game of the weekend, Dallas at 49ers. Look, it was certainly a game. It was close. There was a lot of tension, certainly early on. There was a little kerfuffle, so to speak, at midfield, or at least a little gentleman's argument going on with the kickers and some of the players and coaches. But at the end of the day, the 49ers took care of business. Like, they weren't terribly sharp early on offense, of course, and you got to give a little bit of credit to Dallas's defense. But man, if you're a Buccaneers fan, I said Buccaneers, I'm not screwing that up. If you're a Buccaneers fan, you got to be kicking yourself watching, well, the 49ers do what just about every other team did to Dallas, and that was force multiple turnovers. Because once again, Dak Prescott looked like a guy who just was good at best. And I'm not saying he played good in this game. I don't think he played all that well. But he doesn't look like a guy who's going to be the elite, go win a Super Bowl with him type of guy. Because from what I've seen this last handful of months, is a guy that just can't help but turn the ball over, unless he's playing the Buccaneers, of course.
Yeah, I mean, he tied for the league lead in interception with Davis Mills with 15, and he missed 5 games. He had 15 interceptions in 12 games, and then 2 more against San Francisco in the divisional round. The thing about Dak is he was always kind of considered, I would say, an elite game manager. I mean, I'm not sure that phrase even applies to anyone, but
that makes sense. Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Like a game manager who can also do some other things. Well, the game manager can't throw 2 interceptions every game.
Yeah.
Like that's not part of the deal, right?
And he tried to throw more too. Oof.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there were 3 or 4 other ones out there that could have been picked off. I mean, they scored 12 points. And then I think it also gets in your head if you can trust your kicker, if you can't trust your kicker. I mean, he had an extra point blocked, which is on the kicker because the kick was so low.
Look,
so that kick, changing some of your mentality.
If you saw the replay, that kick was destined to. That looked like it was going to be like any of the kicks that he missed against the Buccaneers, because that was moving. God, I don't know my geometry. It was moving on the x-axis. It wasn't moving on the y-axis there, and it looked like it was heading off to the left. So that will screw up your offense when you can't, especially in a game like that. 19-12, it was kind of a tractor pull, which you kind of expect because both defenses are really good. So now you got a kicker that you can't trust. Meanwhile, the other team has a kicker that's perfect, literally perfect in his postseason career. So
that was a big difference, between the two teams. The field goal kickers, wide advantage for the San Francisco 49ers, and I think that kind of played into the game.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the 49ers, they're, I'm not going to sit here and say, look, they got a quarterback that's obviously learning on the fly. This is his 10th career start or whatever it is. They're managing it quite well, and Brock Purdy's playing some pretty good football. He's had some moments that I think he's been fortunate. There haven't been turnovers or the free running backwards. I think he's had some luck there, and again, I'm not saying that you make your own luck, okay, but you can't make a living taking a snap and running backwards. That's it. You can get away with it for some time, but there's going to be instances where it's just going to backfire big time, or you're going to turn the ball over, or you're going to end up getting hurt. Because there was one play where he ran backwards and he basically turned around and immediately threw it away, and it ended up being a nice play. But man, if he's a couple seconds too late there, he's getting absolutely squashed.
Yep.
He might get injured, he might fumble the ball, or he might throw an interception. So I don't want to say they're playing, because they're not playing with fire. Because again, I'm not taking any credit away from Brock Purdy. 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions this season, which again, how can you doubt that? But you can look at some of the other plays and you're like, all right, let's make sure. And this is where you give credit to the coaching staff, because you're not really asking him to do too much. And I think that's the most important thing, especially when you have guys like Tebow Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. And my God, George Kittle, what a catch. Oh, man, what a catch on that big key drive there late in the game. That was great. So
Tom Brady's going to like throwing to him next year.
Well, I really got to hope that they lose. For my personal interest, I got to hope that the 49ers lose next week, because if they go to the Super Bowl, they might convince themselves that it wouldn't be necessary. So
that's right.
Well, we'll see. But yeah, look, I mean, a solid win for the 49ers. They continue to do what they do, but let's be honest, this Eagles team is a different matchup for them. So I think they're going to have to ask Brock Purdy to do more and really kind of push the limits of what he's capable of doing right now, because you can't kind of just play protective football against the Eagles. You're going to have to attack, and I think the 49ers are capable of doing that. We've seen them do it, but not against a team as good as the Eagles. So impressive win for the 49ers for sure. Just on the flip side, Dallas, well, you've been doing this for 29 years now.
They're the Cowboys.
Yeah,
they do Cowboys things, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what it is.
To lose these games. Yeah, and you look at Brock Purdy, I think, I've never seen a guy who doesn't have an incredible arm that likes to roll left as much as he does.
Yeah.
Like, he likes to roll left, which is something, everybody went nuts over with Zach Wilson and pro day. Guys like Aaron Rodgers and John Elway with their great arms would do that. I didn't expect Brock Purdy to be a guy that likes to roll left, but that is part of those boots that they run in that offense. So, he's just kind of maybe following orders, but he's going to feel pressure next week, because the Eagles pass rush is incredible.
Yeah.
They had 70 plus sacks this year, and 5 more against the Giants on Saturday night. So, I mean, they're going to put pressure on him. And the best matchup is going to be San Francisco's run defense, which is the best in football, against Philadelphia's rush offense, which is the best in football. That's going to be where the game is decided.
Yeah, I like I said, I think we got very fortunate to get some really good matchups for conference championship weekend. So that's going to do it for us here today. We will be back later in the week, and we will be talking, the conference championships, because, we're just that much closer to the Super Bowl. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live. And, of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com for all the latest and greatest. So thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.